So I have a talk about, a little bit about, I was told that I should talk a little bit about myself, a little about the MariaDB project with some security aspects, and that's what I plan to deliver today. So history, as many of you know, the name of Mysql comes from my oldest daughter, My. Here you see her just a couple of days old in '89. And this also reflects that Mysql is a very old project. I started it in 1981. And I'm still developing MariaDB, which is the next generation of Mysql. I've been working from home since 1982. I created Mysql as a virtual company, and I'm still working from home. Even if we now have offices in Finland, Bulgaria, and US. I also have a son Max, and we have a product MaxScale. We also had a old project called MaxDB, and this is from my summer place up in north in Finland. Here is Maria. Last year we have a seal as a logo for MariaDB. This is in Dubai, and we had to spend some time convincing Maria that she can't take the seal home. We have about 50 animals at home, and seal would kind of fit in, but still a little bit hard to have in Finland. So Maria before, Maria today, and we also have me today. So that's kind of my family. So a little bit about my early years. I started with programming with computers with very little resources. And that kind of reflects how things are done in MySQL originally and also in MariaDB. I started doing clones of games, everything assembler. And this was the good days when you with 4K you could do something, a game or something. Nowadays it's impossible to do anything with, you need 30 meg to do a little bit of, couple lines of programming Go or something. So I did a lot of my early programming with 32K and basically learned how to use things efficiently. If you look at the MySQL code base, almost all functions is designed from the start that do them as efficiently as possible so we don't have to do it again. And I always tell our developers that it's better to spend more time to do it once so we don't have to rewrite it. At least that should be the intention from the start. And that comes kind of from the background of that. So I studied in technology of university in Otaniemi. I never finished. I studied there basically 2 years, but noticed that I already know everything they can teach about computers because I've been self-studying anything that I could get my hands on. So in '83, I met David Axmark, the second founder of MySQL, and I did a lot of development on the Sun Spark station in the early days, and MySQL was kind of developed on Spark, which was one of the reasons I was so happy when Sun eventually acquired MySQL. So the old project I have been developed since 1981. In '94, I added the SQL interface on it, released it under the name of MySQL. We took in some investments 5 years later. And as an entrepreneur, I think that's kind of one of the most important lessons I learned early on. You shouldn't take money from investors until you don't need the money. When the investors are knocking on your door every day and you don't need the money, you get a much better deal than if your company is going to get under in a couple of weeks if you don't need money. So eventually MySQL was sold to Sun for $1 billion, which was back then the biggest price for any open source company. I did leave 1 year later to work on the Maria storage engine to replace InnoDB, but everything changed when Oracle acquired Sun. So then we started MariaDB because I've always been committed to open source. And I didn't want that the project that I've been working on since '81 just would be finished. I got some money from the Sun deal, but MySQL was not only about money, it's actually doing something good. I love the fact that we had a process or idea of how to make money that one person in 1,000 paid. So we could give something out for free, making the world better for 999 person, and one person paid for all of that. And with Oracle, there were no security that MySQL will continue. And the development of MySQL has been lagging behind what happened with MariaDB. The reason original MySQL was released as open source was that I started to work with open source very early, around '85. And we always wanted, me and David Axmark, we always wanted to give something back. But the problem with giving back or making something open source is that you need to have a business model and also a product that has enough users so that you can afford to work on it full time. Because back then and even now, it's very hard to do open source project. Most people do it by doing it on the night after the normal work, but that will never make a product that will be usable for all. So MySQL was the first project that we thought that this is good enough that we could make a living on it, only doing this. And we come up with how to make, we were the first one who come up with how to make money with the GPL license. And nowadays I have a lot of talks about how to make money on open source. And the best two licenses to use that is either GPL or a business source license, which something me and David come up with. So MariaDB was created. I didn't just want everything just to go to waste. I also had made promises for the last 10, 20 years that open source is secure, you can trust it, doesn't go away. I would have felt that I betrayed everyone if I just have stopped working on MySQL, and Oracle would have been able to kill off MySQL. And the other part was that during the MySQL journey, I met a lot of friends, developers who was working with MySQL with me, and I wanted to ensure that they would have a workplace for life. So that's why we created MariaDB, and most of the developers from MySQL moved to MariaDB. When it comes to security, it's the most important job for a company when you decide to which software you should use is, will this software exist after 10 years, 20 years? Can you trust in that? With most commercial software, there's no trust that if the company goes away, you can't use it. Do you trust that the company who is managing the software will continue with that? So what I did was I created the MariaDB Foundation, who owns the repository of MariaDB. This guarantees that even if the MariaDB Corporation eventually gets sold, this code will always be free. So I can give, by doing this, we can guarantee that you can use MariaDB forever. It will never go away, which I think is the most important security for any project. We have sponsors in the MariaDB Foundation who actually makes it possible for me to be here today and talk. We are 12 people working on in the foundation, ensuring not only that it's open source, but that it's actively developed. So we work in the foundation with getting companies like Acronis, Microsoft, Intel, everybody to contribute on the MariaDB software. So we have lots of companies who are developing. It's not only the MariaDB Corporation. Corporation is there to ensure that if you need support, if you need help, if you need advanced features developed, the corporation takes care of that. The foundation is just there to ensure freedom and collaboration. So we do everything in open development. Anybody can participate. It's as easy to work on developing MariaDB if you're working for the MariaDB Corporation, Foundation, or you're working for any company. Everything is open, all plans are open. We have free developers conferences. 2 times a year. Next time is in New York, 23rd of February. If you happen to be there, you're welcome and come and join and see what you can do to help the project going forward. I believe one of the reasons MySQL and MariaDB become popular was that first it's both very easy to install, but it's also very easy to upgrade. If you have using Linux and you're going from one Linux distribution to the next one, usually there's things that stops working. I hated that with passion in the early days, and with MySQL and especially with MariaDB, we had made it trivial that upgrading from MySQL to MariaDB or from 2 MariaDB versions should just take seconds. It should just work. So we don't remove features, we don't remove syntax, we do everything we can to keep things just working, even when there is security problems, and I will have a couple of slides about what happened just last week and how we solved that in MariaDB to be able to do easy upgrades. So what was MariaDB? So we started with the MySQL source, we made a fork, and we have done everything to make it compatible with MySQL, so it's just seconds to move from MySQL to MariaDB. You get something that is more secure, faster, guaranteed open source. We have also LGPL connectors to allow you to use it for free for with most languages. And all MySQL connectors should work with MariaDB and vice versa. We do release every year. We have been able to do that from the start. And each release has a theme, and in 10.4 it's security. So we should have a beta actually we have a beta in February. Actually we have beta now, we should have RC in February. There's lots of companies using MariaDB. So how many here are using MySQL? Okay, that's a little less than the normal audience. So MySQL is a database, you know. If you're using Google, Yahoo, Facebook, Twitter, you're using MySQL or MariaDB. 80% of the internet sites are using MySQL or MariaDB. So you're all MariaDB users. Of course, if there's somebody who doesn't use internet, then you are in the wrong conference. So the next slide is the question, what's the difference between MySQL and MariaDB? What is it that we have done in MariaDB that we are so proud about? So we have a more storage engine, and one of the unique features with MySQL, and we are taking it to the next level to MariaDB, is that I did realize very early, around 85, that most of the complexity in databases comes to how you store things. And storage, if you store things in per column or per row or compressed or in memory, everything, all your performance sooner or later goes down to the media. So in MySQL MariaDB, we have a different layer for the SQL query where we parse the language and the storage layer. And that allows us to do some things that other databases can only dream about. So we have lots of different ways to do storage. We have InnoDB is the most common one. We also have a connect engine. You can connect to almost any other database through JDBC and also different format. So you can, with MariaDB, you can do a join between data in Oracle, DB2, Postgres, and MariaDB in the same query. So that makes it very easy for you to verify data, move data. We can even access MongoDB files. We also have a column store engine, which is the distributed engine where all the data is on nodes, and with that we can handle petabytes of data. We have MyRocks, which is developed by Facebook, which get you highly compressed data. And we have lots of others. And we just acquired a company, Clustrix, which has a distributed OLTP engine, which for transactions, OLAP is for analytics, and this will give us a rate scaling. So today, MariaDB is the only open source database that can give you unlimited read scaling and unlimited write scaling. You don't need another database. So some features that you only find in MariaDB compared to MySQL. So we have, because the whole optimizer team and the most advanced developers moved from MySQL and MariaDB. So, and when they moved, of course, they did not know a lot about the server and the already planned features. So they continued on MariaDB, and that's why we got all these advanced features that never made into MySQL. And one of the, not on this slide, and one of the most important things that we added in 10.3, that we worked together with the DBS Bank of Asia, or Singapore, we added a PLSQL, which is Oracle layer on MariaDB. So how many here are using Oracle? Okay, 2, 3, okay. Just so you know, you can, DBS was able to take all the stored procedures, unchanged, move it to MariaDB, and get rid of Oracle licenses almost 1 year. I don't know how many tens of millions of euros or dollars they are saving every year. You can all do that. You don't need Oracle anymore. You have an open source database that can do most of the important things that Oracle can do. Oracle is a great feature. We don't have everything, but at least we have managed to move one of the biggest banks in the world to MariaDB, almost unchanged. It took us 1 year to add this layer, but we worked with the bank for doing that. So this is something that the corporation do. If somebody has had a problem with big databases and alter tables, so alter table causes disruption because it takes a long time if you have a really big table. In 10.3, you can do instantly add columns. It doesn't take any time to do those. In 10.4, the upcoming version, you can do almost any changes that doesn't change data format. You can add columns, you can drop columns, you can extend columns. Everything is instant within a DB. We have compressed columns. We have packages, which was needed for DBS. We also added system versioning. System versioning is actually really good for security. So I will have a talk about that in a couple of slides, but let's better take it here. So system versioning allows you to say that when you create a table, you say that this table is created with system versioning. That means that the database will remember everything about the old data in the database and allows you to go back in time and see what happened. If you have an intrusion of a hacker coming in, there was just an article today about Yahoo had given letting hackers access lots of data. And the problem was that they can't say what data this hacker access. And you see that basically every month in the news. If they would use MariaDB, system versioning, and audit log, everything that is open source, you can go back in time and see that here's the queries that the hacker did back then, and you can see the data, exact data that he's accessing. I think that's something that every database should have. Then we have some features that still we haven't have from MySQL. We are working on those. We also do lots of work with different hardware vendors, IBM, to improve performance. So this was work that we did for IBM for their new hardware, and we got about a 30% speed up by working with them for a couple of months. So we are committed to security. Actually, from the start, we added SSL protocol very early. It was sometimes in the 95, 96. We also are proud to say that we are forcing Oracle to do things in MySQL. So we added encryption of all the important things in 10.1. And 1 year later, Oracle announced that we also now have encryption. My firm belief is that if we wouldn't have added encryption, Oracle would never have done that in MySQL, because they are deadly afraid that too many people will move to MariaDB, so they are adding things just to stop things going away. We also added that we are now doing system version authentication, so we don't need to have default passwords. One of the problems with the database when you install it the first time is that you need a password or some way to access the database first time. And MySQL generates a password and stores that in a encrypted form somewhere that you can access. But that's really hard for automated systems. MariaDB 10.4, we are using the system user as to authenticate the database. So we don't need to generate any passwords. So this is basically socket authentication. So the incident I talked about was that this is just a way how to think about it. So there were 2 or 3 weeks ago, actually last week, it was last week, somebody mentioned that if you have a MariaDB server that is compromised, there's a way that it can, if you connect it from your machine to this unknown machine, and then this machine can actually give a command to say that read this file from your local machine. Of course, this is hypothetical because most times you access your own database server, not other outsides. But that's still a security issue. And it's only with load data local in file, which is the command that says, take this local file on my system and send it to the server, that when this is needed. And we were talking a lot about in the company that how should we solve this security issue. We could just disable load data local in file by default. But that would probably break most applications who are using that because they would then to go to configure file and enable it by the sort and by default. And if you have a cloud vendor and you are running your application there, you will not know how to do that. So what we come up with was that we are disabling it by default, but we added coding to see that if the command that you're executing is a load data in file, then we will accept the command from the server, and not for every command. And that should solve things for most users without having to change anything. But we're also adding a new API that you can in your application to say that I want to have it disabled always, but then you can have a fallback that you can know I'm doing a load data in file, and you can allow access to this specific file, and this will solve it completely. But that will require an application change. And you don't want to have a security upgrade that will break things. So this is a kind of mentality of how to do things right. Even if Sergey was talking about us already security, Acron is also a backup company. And the last 2 months, I personally have worked on creating the best possible backup for MariaDB. Those who knows MySQL knows that in the old times, the only thing you had in MySQL dump, in the beginning of the internet, your database was small, taking a dump of everything in clear text was good enough. The problem with the dump was that you basically have to, if you want to have everything consistent, you have to lock everything. So your database was inaccessible while you took the backup. And you had 2 options, lock all tables and single transactions for doing that. Then a guy at Yahoo developed MySQL hot copy, and that was basically, instead of doing it logical to physical, it did basically the same thing, much faster, but still did flush tables with read lock, which basically locks the whole database. Heikki Tuuri, who's developed InnoDB, he thought that, hey, I can make money of the fact that there is no good backup for MySQL. So he created Inno Backup, which was physical backup, mostly for InnoDB, could do MyISAM in some context, but still had no way to protect against if there is a create or drop during the backup. But Kona did the extra backup, which is probably the most used backup now. And they also had the complete encryption. But the problem is that it's still hard to get a full backup. Because to do a full backup that is totally consistent, that you know that I have a backup point where you have all data, you have to use either lockddl or lockddl per table. With both of those blocks DDL operations, either just for everything or just for those tables that exist. And that is the problem, because we have no customers who are using MariaDB with, it's actually not 10 terabytes, it's not that uncommon. With copy, even 4 terabytes physically takes an hour. And if you have lots of users and you have no control of the users, there's no way to ensure that there is no alter tables, drop table, create tables during the backup. And until recently, there has not been a single good solution for that. Snapshots works, but snapshots also have some limitations. So what I wanted to do was create the best backup that ever existed. It should have a minimum amount of server locks. Normally when you run it, you should see almost no disruption of service at all, maybe sub-second somewhere. You should be consistent over all storage engine that stores data locally. No locks for area, which is the one of the new storage engine in Maria. You should be able to do create table, alter table during the backup. You shouldn't even notice that has any impact. We also need the support for statistics and log tables that are updated constantly, and they are not transactional, which is a problem. So one of the unique things with Mysql and MariaDB that actually makes things harder for a backup is that we have this different storage engine that all have different capabilities. Some of those are transactional and some of them are not transactional. And that causes a problem because with the non-transactional engines, there is no way to redo changes that happens. So what we did, so this is something that I designed and I have implemented. So we have now 5 new commands, all backup stages. Basically, you start the backup when you inform the server that, no, I'm doing a backup, and you can only have one backup running at the same time. So the backup start basically just informs the storage engine that, hey, we will take a backup, and also starts a log for all DDL commands. Then we do a flush, and actually after start, you can already start copying all InnoDB tables, but because InnoDB, we also copy the redo log. So even if we copy something that is old, the redo log that we apply later will fix everything. So we can basically copy almost everything without any locks after backup start. So when we have most of the InnoDB and area tables copied, we do a backup stage flush, who will move all non-transactional tables and move them in or prepare them for a read-only state. And then we can copy everything that is not in use, and then we block all DDLs. And because everything is copied, the DDL lock will be very, very short. We just want to ensure that now we have a stage where no new tables are created. And then the backup program can go to the log and see, okay, while I was doing this copy, all these new tables were created, altered. So it then copies only those tables that you created during the backup process. And then you do the block commit, which is the hardest lock where there's no commits, but during those you only have to copy the statistics tables and the log tables and basically the end of those, which basically is a subsequent job. And then you have a backup where basically you will not notice something is backup. But there's still a couple of loose ends. The thing is that one table can consist of many files. I know we had a backup program who's working on the outside. It can know that while we are copying this table that consists of 3 files. The server can do a create statement or alter table, and this can change. So I added a backup lock command that will just lock one file table for DDLs. And so the idea is that you lock the table for DDL. So if it's an alt table, you have basically wait for it. But with most cases, this is very fast. You can do 50,000 of those per second. So if you lock the DDL, you open the files that are related to the file, and then you unlock it. So basically, it doesn't take any time. But this ensures that all files that you copy are from the same generation, and you avoid inconsistencies. And with that, you have a perfect backup. And the nice thing with this backup things for Acronis, we have been working with Acronis, MariaDB is working with Acronis to enhance the backup process of MariaDB. So Acronis only need to do backup state starts, and backup states block DDL, and then they can take a snapshot, and then they have a consistent snapshot. They can be sure that there's no intermediate results that they lose. So the backup will be instant also for those who like to do snapshots. So I already talked about the Connect storage engine that allows you to connect to a lot of different servers, databases. It's made by Olivier Bertrand, who is over 80. He's still programming, active, developing it. And that's one of the nice things for programmers who meet me, who are getting a little bit older, that we still have a long way to go before we can stop working. I don't plan to stop working anytime soon. I do love doing development. I spend about 50% of my time doing development and 50% of my time doing conferences and leading the rest of the development group, ensuring they do the right thing when it comes to performance and security. Column Store is our analytical engine that can handle petabytes of data. You can replace Teradata and things like this with an open source alternative. And the design of it is that you can have many MariaDB servers connected to storage. So you have a high availability both on the SQL level and the data level. We just hired the creator of the Spider storage engine, which is a distributed engine that is used a lot in China, especially by Tencent, where and we have been able to replace big Cassandra clusters with only a few nodes of Spider. Myrox gives you the better performance, and we're working with Facebook actively. On this one, we have one person who's doing most of the development of the storage engine side for MariaDB, working full-time on just doing Myrox. And Clustrix is the storage engine that I talked about, that we just acquired. We are just now attaching it to MariaDB. We hope to have it by the end of the year. We should have a demo where these two technologies are integrated. And the nice thing with this one is it solves two things. Just by adding more worker nodes, you get proportional write performance compared to the amount of nodes. So if you have 6 nodes, it's almost exactly twice as fast as 2 nodes. The nice thing what it can do is that it can even do joins internally. So if you have all your tables in Clustrix, in that case, MariaDB server can push down the whole join. You can have many MariaDB servers attach it to get more distributed, and it also keeps duplicated information. So you never need to do backups because it takes backups internally itself. So we started with MariaDB in 2009, and it took some struggle to get people to accept that, hey, can we actually replace MySQL? But starting from 2012, things have gone very, very rapidly. Today, the state is that all Linux distributions are supporting MariaDB. Most of them doesn't support MySQL anymore. So we have, in Linux, we have more or less totally replaced MySQL, at least for new applications. And we are just getting, Debian is only using MariaDB, and we are now hoping to get MariaDB 10.3 in the latest Debian that will be released in a couple of months. Microsoft just announced that they will be a platinum sponsor for the MariaDB Foundation. We are happy to have Microsoft on board. And there's, for those who are using MySQL, there's no reason to use MySQL anymore. You can move to MariaDB like that, and you get a better database with a great backup. So we have 3 minutes for questions.
Okay, thank you very much for your detailed presentation. I'm sure that many developers in this conference hall use MySQL and MariaDB. Now it's time for Q&A session. Please be precise and brief, and please state your name. Any questions? There's a gentleman out there.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
My question is very short. Which store engine you recommend?
In a DB, normally, I would say that in a DB is for most parts a really powerful engine, one of the best that exist for any database. So what I usually recommend customers, start with InnoDB, and then when you know this is not enough, then you can look at your data, what is a better solution. If you need more writes, just adding more replicas. MariaDB can has any amount of replicas in different configurations. So read scaling is not a problem. But if you have data that is, let's say, go over 4 terabytes and you want to access it with aggregates, then column store is the obvious choice. And currently, we don't have a solution for write scaling. We will have it by the end of the year with Classfix. So. But of course, if you want, there's always special cases. Assuming that you want to exchange data regularly with your users and have something they can just go and click and download at the latest version, then InnoDB is not good at that because it has lots of metadata and everything else. So that's why lots of people using Area or MyISM still, just because you can just copy it and you can install it on another server and it just works. You don't need to do anything. So it's a question of what's convenient. InnoDB is what you should start with. And we have 2 of the main InnoDB developers now working on MariaDB. So we have the best InnoDB engine that exists, much better than what Oracle have.
Hello. Hey.
So, I mean...
Hey. Yeah, you can hear me now. Thank you for the presentation. My name is Daniel Georgiev. So my question is, I understand that you're pulling code monthly from the MySQL database into, not the database, but the code.
Yeah, we pull up to 5.7, we are pulling all the changes that are related to MariaDB. We are pulling into for MySQL that's related to MariaDB, we are pulling in. We're taking all security issues. We don't pull anything from MySQL 8.0 because 8.0 it's not really MySQL anymore. It's kind of a new database where they have done design choices that, in my opinion, is not sane. So we are not really looking at that. We are looking at features, but then we are developing them themselves because we just have better developers in MariaDB because they have been working on MariaDB and MySQL for the last 30 years.
Thank you. You explained my question before I asked it. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
We have a gentleman out there.
Can you say a few words about competitors and why development should prefer MariaDB?
Competitiveness.
Another SQL systems.
Another SQL systems. I mean, you mean like Postgres, MySQL, or something else?
Yeah.
So what we are trying to do is that, because we have 2 groups, we have the foundation and we have the corporation. Corporation works with customers like DBS and say that, oh, you need PLSQL, okay, let's work with it together. So we are driving by customer needs. And that's, I think, is what most companies are doing. What's unique with MariaDB, we have the foundation who is working with companies like Tencent, Alibaba, who has their own development, own forks of MySQL. And we are working with them and planning new features and helping them get their features into MariaDB. So we get also the help from the community that is getting broader the whole time. So we can't say what feature we will have in the next release. We know what the corporation is doing because they're committed that these are the features we will do to these customers. But for each release, we also get a lot of features from other players who are doing their need. So I would say that this is looking at the competitive landscape. The closed source databases doesn't get this. They don't have a community who actively help making the database better or the clients better or anything else. You have then you're looking at the open source databases. I mean, there's only 2 relational databases today you can even consider using, that basically MariaDB and Postgres. Postgres is a good database, but it doesn't have the performance characteristics like MariaDB or the breadth of usage. It's a good database, but if you want to have something that actually can hold the state of time and you can guarantee that the data format doesn't change for the next 100 years, which we actually do in MariaDB for MyASM and Area Storage Center. We can do guarantees that nobody else can do. So I think that we should be the default choice for databases. We are not perfect in everything, but we are pretty good at most things.
One more question.
Hey, hi. How do you think MariaDB will fit in the new kind of IT world in containers and Kubernetes?
I mean, we have an office here in Sofia, who is just working on creating a DBase service for MariaDB using Kubernetes. And we are heavily investing into making, what is it called? I lost the word. But basically, we are enhancing infrastructure and making it really easy to use MariaDB in containers and everything else. So looking at OpenShift and everybody else, they are heavily using MariaDB. So I think that relational databases are here forever because the NoSQL, they fit basically one person, one shoe, while a relational database fits all shoes. And so I see that in the future, most big companies may have 1 or 2 non-relational databases, but everybody will have a relational. And my job is to ensure that's MariaDB.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Monty.
Thank you.